Join us this new year for new conversations at the Commonwealth Club.
Equity is just and fair inclusion in a society where everybody can participate, prosper, thrive, and reach their full potential. I think that kind of utopic vision is within reach, and I can't think of a region that is better positioned to be the prototype for making it happen.
Good afternoon and happy Black History Month. My name is Fred Blackwell. I'm the CEO of the San Francisco Foundation, and I, for one, am very excited about today's conversation about Black women leading in the Bay Area. I'm not going to say a whole lot because we've got a fabulous panel and moderator for you today, but I just wanted to say that this body of work is something that the foundation has had a long-standing commitment to, and really today's conversation and the broader work in general holds special meaning for us at the San Francisco Foundation because the work that we do to support women of color who are leading in the Bay Area is actually led by 4 fantastic women of color inside the foundation. So feeling a great deal of responsibility to deliver for them today. We support this work, as I said, as a broader body of work at the foundation. And in fact, we have some exciting announcements that we're going to be making later on about the work that we're doing and how we're going to continue to support it. But before jumping into the program, really just wanted to make 2 acknowledgements. One is I just wanted to acknowledge and thank all of the elected leaders that are on the panel and in the audience today. Really appreciate your participation with us today and look forward to the conversation. And also want to acknowledge our Bay Area League's donors at the San Francisco Foundation. We created a fund to support the foundation's leadership and advocacy work around equity a few years ago. And it's with that support that programs like this are made possible. And so just want to acknowledge those donors. And now what I want to do is turn it over to the Foundation's Chief of Staff, Brandy Howard, who's going to be moderating the conversation. Brandy is my partner in crime. Looking forward to this conversation. And Brandy, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Fred, and thank you for that introduction. I thank all of you for being here and spending this hour with us today. This is a very important and timely conversation. We want to just, before we really get started, please to just I'm thankful to moderate this conversation with these amazing Black women leaders on this stage. And I also just want to thank, as Fred said, our foundation donors who have supported this work for many, many years, and the work that we continue to do with the Commonwealth Club on its programs. If you are interested in any of the conversations that we've had previous with the Commonwealth Club, you can log on to their website at www.commonwealthclub.org, and you can go back and look at these amazing conversations. So now that we got those logistics out the way, I'm ready to really get into a conversation. And this is like I said, very timely and very important conversation. Because if we know historically, and we'd be remiss to not talk about historically the way Black women have led in the civic and political spaces for many, many years. And if we go any further back, because this is Black History Month, I would say for centuries, have really led for freedom, liberation, for not for ourselves, for our families, our communities, but actually for all. And since 2018, we've had a record number of Black women who have launched campaigns at every level. We now have 23 Black women who are members of the House of Representatives and 8 that are leading in the US top 100 cities as mayor. We can speak very clear, really can and bring close to home Kamala Harris, who come from the Bay and now at the highest branch of executive office. We can talk about Barbara Lee, who unprecedentedly have just made history and really embody what leadership is. And understanding her racialized leadership as a Black woman to still lead and bring everyone along on the journey to liberation and freedom. And then I would be really remiss not to speak to our own, and I would say part of the SFF family, Mia Bonta, who actually had been a 20-year gap between Barbara Lee and Mia Bonta. So Mia Bonta is still blazing this trail, but that gap of 25 years let us know it's still a lot of work to do. And these four women on the stage, when we really talk about their journey, we'll take a Sankofa moment because we want this an opportunity for you to look back, to bring in and evoke the other Black women who have inspired you to this state, to the place you are today and through your journey. And we'll just talk about what is your experience? What do you need from us to show up so that you continue to show out for us in the platforms that you have? And then help us to call us to action on how we can continue to support not just you and your leadership, but the movement that goes beyond all of us. So again, thank you so much for being here. And I will jump right into the conversation that we're going to have today with BART Board Director Lateefah Simon, the Emeryville City Council Member Courtney Welsh, California Assembly District 20 candidate Jennifer Esteen, and Oakland mayoral candidate Alyssa Victory. So before we really get into the conversation and I ask my first question, I want to remind everyone that this is going to be a conversation. That if you have questions, please put them in the chat. If you have them for me, for the guests, you put them in the YouTube chat and we will answer them throughout the program and definitely have time set aside at the end to do so. So we're going to jump in, and I would like this to be a question that each one of you take some time to answer. And this is, again, that moment of, I would love for you to really think about your journey and share your journey. Share what has inspired you to use politics as your platform to lead from. And use this as a moment to evoke the names of the women, particularly the Black women who has inspired you and guided you to and through where you are today. And I will tell us, let's start with Alyssa. We'll go to Jennifer, Courtney, and then Lateefah.
Thank you for the intro. Thank you for having me here. I'm so honored to be a part of this panel and event with so many powerful Black women who are leading and who actually have inspired my journey. So I'm honored to be now speaking alongside them. I am Alyssa Victory. I am from Oakland, representing Oakland always. Oakland is what inspires my public service journey and my journey to public office. I began serving with my community in Oakland through our church when I was in middle school and seeing just the need for people to have basic food access or clothing or hygiene supplies. And this was decades ago in the city of Oakland. And I continued serving as a youth leader. And it's really been youth organizations that have provided space and leadership training and development for me to know how to serve at any age that I've been. My first job was with Oakland Youth Together doing education in terms of ethnic studies in our school system funding, and gave me the language of social justice and helped me to be able to talk about inequity and talk about race and talk about racial justice. And I've really continued in that same spirit, helping serve at my college campus, doing sexual violence prevention work, doing educational access for students like me as a first-generation college and graduate student. I know that it is not hard, I know it's not easy to navigate or to even fund an education and have access to those resources. And so any space I've been able to break into, I'm trying to break it open further for other people that look like me, that come from Oakland, that have similar experiences, to be able to access them as well. And I've continued that journey as now a civil rights attorney, practicing in criminal justice as well as workers' rights. So it's been just the experiences and all the people that have poured into me and showed me how to give back from whatever place I was in, whatever access that I had. And I'm really happy to be here on this panel again, sharing some of my own experiences and learning from my peers.
Thank you. Jennifer, you want to share your journey and evoke those names? We really want to be, we're in Black History Month. We're going to use this as an icebreaker to come out, but we're going to break out and really evoke those names and those spirits and energies of the legacies that we're building and the shoulders we're standing on. So please call those into space.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. You know, I am a registered nurse, and when I got out of nursing school, there was a woman, Marjorie Davis, who took me to the director of nursing at San Francisco General Hospital. She walked me to the executive suite, knocked on the door, and demanded that I be hired. And I was like, what is going on here? I was shocked because there weren't any permanent staff who were Black people working in the psychiatric unit, the psychiatric emergency room in San Francisco General Hospital, a hospital that has historically served our Black community in San Francisco. And that was the beginning of my journey. I've been there 12 years, and several years ago, I got radicalized when my clients were going to be evicted. And I say I was radicalized because I was a single mom for the majority of my journey as a nurse. I became a nurse because I was a single parent. My mom, Lorraine Judson, was a registered nurse who retired from the city of New Orleans Health Department and also from the VA hospital. And I saw that no matter what was happening, we had stability because she had stability. And my clients came to me and let me know that their stability was in question, that they were going to be evicted for a policy decision. And it turned into a huge public battle that I waged to protect their housing. And as a result, I became the vice president of organizing for my union, SEIU 1021. I helped to write legislation called Mental Health SF, and also put on the ballot a $150 million tax measure that was taxing excessive CEO income, first of its kind in the nation, progressive tax on CEOs, and learned so much through that process. But what I really have to lean on is that within the ancestry of my family legacy, my great-grandfather, 6 times removed, is Toussaint L'Ouverture, the first Black person to lead a slave revolt successfully and eradicate the French from Haiti. So standing on the shoulders of giants, knowing that we must fight oppression is something that is inside of my bones and my blood. And, you know, it's where we are. So now, fast forward to living in an unincorporated area in Alameda County. I've been appointed to serve on the Alameda Health System Board of Trustees, and feel it as though it is an incredible privilege to be a registered nurse working and also be serving in the backside on the systems level, instituting policy, serving as the chair of the finance committee of $1 billion budget of a health system that manages 4 hospitals and thousands of health workers. When I saw COVID devastate my community, I knew it was the moment for me to step up, answer the call, and put my hat in the ring and say, I am going to try to implement policy in a bigger way so that we can benefit all the people in our community. And I am just so grateful and honored to be here today with these powerful women and to be able to speak about the journey that has begun and the journey that is continuing.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Before we circle over to Courtney, I want to just circle back really quickly to Alyssa, because we want to make sure that as we do this in traditional African culture, we have to close our circles. It's really important that we never leave a circle open. And so I want to circle back to Alyssa, to just give her a few more moments on the stage to invoke the names of those who have inspired you through your journey. Because that's also our way of giving honor to the ancestors in our kind of virtual pouring of libation. So.
Thank you, Brandy. And thanks for calling me in to make sure that I honor the folks that have poured into me and name them specific. I have to mention my mother, Karen, who raised me by herself along with my younger sister. My mother was a preschool teacher, so she was my first teacher. She made sure that I had extra education and knowledge, especially of Black history and of Black women's history at home, in addition to my public school ed. And also my grandmother, who was a nurse, who taught us a lot about, being able to take care of ourselves at home, having really basic like first aid trainings as a kid. and who poured a lot of just her stories from growing up in the Deep South and dealing with a lot of racism and hatred, and why my family migrated over to California a few generations ago. I definitely want to shout out the Black women who really put me on their shoulders and helped me move from college to law school. I am first generation in my family, didn't have anyone in my family who knew what it was like to go through financial aid or even applying to these schools or getting letters of rec. But I had 4 Black women who literally put in their money and who took me shopping and made sure that I had a suit so that I could go to interview for law school jobs. Edwina Welch, Ebony Williams, Ann Briggs Addo, and Antigone Blackwell all poured into me and made sure that I wasn't going to be judged or looked down upon because I could not afford to buy my own suits or things like that in law school. And those are small things that other people have never, questioned or asked about, but they didn't ask me if I wanted it. They just took me and said, we're going to take you out, have a talk, and we're going to take you shopping. And that was just a beautiful experience to see people who just know my leadership and have paired their own expertise and their own willingness to pour back into me. So thank you
so much, Alyssa. That's really critical as we continue to talk about what it means to be a Black woman leader and in the political space. So thank you so much for adding that. Courtney, I would love for you to share your journey to this platform and also those who have carried you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be a part of this panel. And I was thinking about, my journey, and it's like what really inspired me to get involved in public service. And I mean, honestly, it was just exhaustion. I was tired. I was battling housing unaffordability, like so many of us are dealing with today. And almost 7 years ago now, me and my oldest son had to temporarily relocate to San Diego to stay with my grandmother because we couldn't find anything affordable in the city in which I was born and raised, Oakland. And I just took a moment. It was personally frustrating. But then when I really sat down and thought about it, and then also witnessed how the tent communities were just exploding with people day after day, just growing by hundreds of people day after day, week after week, I thought about, with someone like me who has the privileges and the access that I have, if I'm struggling, what does it look like for folks who don't have the same access, the same education, the same income? If it's hard for me, what do you think is going on with anyone who, once you take away any of those privileges? So that really just inspired me to want to, one, move back home and fight for my community and fight for our right to stay here, fight for our right to be here, fight for equity, fight for stability, and really just seeing how it was disproportionately impacting the Black community, and not just our ability to organize politically, but just on a very personal level, our social networks were being torn apart, where typically you are growing up and you've got your family so close to you. A lot of us were brought up with cousins and grandparents and aunts and uncles within walking distance. And now folks are being scattered throughout the Bay Area, the state. Some folks are having to leave the state, and seeing how that was just impacting so much of our support systems that allow us to go to the next level. I knew that I just couldn't allow that to happen. Also, for me personally, wanting to know that I'm doing all that I can to make sure I'm leaving my community in a better place that I found it. But also I'm fighting for my children and children like mine, and being able to tell them, this is what advocacy looks like in real time. You must stay involved with your community. You must fight for your community. You must fight for equity. You must fight for everyone. And really just letting them know that they have a mother that cares about the type of community that they grow up in. And speaking of support systems, like having my family, my mother, Helena, who is a graduate of Merritt College, who's been an early childhood educator for over 40 years now. She might get mad that I'm dating her, but she's been very involved and also instilled in me, hard work, entrepreneurship. Why is it important to have an education, get education in whatever way it's presented to you? My father, Horace, it's so important for our Black men to support Black women, and having a father that supports a very ambitious Black daughter is very important for me. My grandmother, I have one living grandparent left, and she's always supported me. Even as a little girl, she called me chairman of the board, and you've got to speak that into your kids. And she wasn't wrong. She always said, I knew whatever you were going to do, you were going to be somebody. And she's always told me that. And having her pour that love and that expectation into me, I felt really gave me the confidence and the attitude that I need to move throughout these spaces. And also just outside of my immediate biological family, my godmother, Allison, who has always been active in her community in Richmond and always a part of my support system from when I was a very little girl. I have such a wonderful support system to uplift me, and really, when it came to definitely this past campaign for city council, which was somewhat unexpected because it was brought up because we had a city council member that resigned. It wasn't something that was planned in advance like a lot of campaigns are. My family just said, hey, you want to do this? We're behind you, we support you. And it was an opportunity for me to serve my community in a way that I hadn't had an opportunity to do so before. Emeryville hadn't had a Black woman city council member in 34 years. So it was an opportunity to diversify, not just by race, but socioeconomically, also geographically. So I'm really happy that I've had them behind me on this journey. And I'm looking forward to really pushing forth great policies in this new role that I'm in now.
Thank you so much, Courtney. I won't say much and pass this over to Latifah.
Courtney, congratulations on your election. Really, I think for all of us, now everyone on the panel, we can say that we've run a race, and it's exhausting. And it really requires something so much deeper than a hubris to run a race, being a Black woman in a space and in spaces that were not designed for us. So congratulations, and really to the sisters on the panel, thank you all for running. It's like so different from the work that we've done in our lives where we're working for people in the pursuit of people. And yes, that is what public office is, but to go out with your hands on your hips and say, I actually can make a fundamental difference. I believe that my ideas have merit, and I want deeply to be in service and believe in me. That is a whole other. And I'm so lucky and blessed to be in a community and in the Bay Area where I got to see women right in front of me do that. Ella Hill Hutch, who was also an elected, she served on the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco. She was also on the BART Board of Directors in the 70s. And she sat with my grandmother in my grandmother's Lakeview living room, and they talked politics, and no one had a cell phone, as you know, but they would call Dianne Feinstein. I'm sitting on the floor playing and remember the grandiose vision of these Black women to try to create a desegregated San Francisco, not a South, not a Alabama, not a Mississippi, but trying to ensure that Black children who were then in systems, or Black men could get jobs with union workers. I was blessed enough to work and live and breathe around so many women. My aunt Damira Ahmad was one of two women amongst a very small group of men and women who led the student strike at San Francisco State, who forever changed the lexicon of how we think about ethnic studies and learning and understanding the road of oppressed people in this country within academia. I was raised by a single mother, who struggled to keep me centered. And I was off kilter most of my childhood and ended up in the juvenile justice system and ended up in and out of school. I landed at an institution called the Young Women's Freedom Center that saved my life, and that taught me so clearly that the pedagogy of the oppressed is the way to liberation. And as a young teenager on probation with a 1.0, that my ideas and what I'd seen on both sides of my family and in the streets of San Francisco were worthy stories to be told. And so becoming a young organizer and a couple years later taking over as executive director of that very small organization at the time, it became clear to me that whatever I didn't learn in a classroom, the things that I had learned being out there as a kid in trouble, the things that I had learned from the powerful, amazing, resilient, beautiful women that had taught me, I could apply in that space and train other young women who were leaving prisons and jails to run our own institution, to create our own Highlander, to hire ourselves, to sit in front of philanthropists in government every day, to demand resources to do what we knew was right to keep girls out of systems. 25 years later, that organization, because of those women, it has over a $7 million budget, and they have memberships of over 5,000 women. They are killing it. And it continues to let me know that the folks closest to all the pain also have all of the truth to how to move through that pain, given the institution and the opportunity they'll move. So my journey, Brandy, Kamala Harris, I don't care what you think about politics. I got to work underneath a woman who was the toughest boss, the best boss, the nurturer, the demander. She took me from my role at the center as executive director and hired me to do something that no DA had ever done, hire a Black woman who at that time had not finished college to be on her executive team to lead reentry initiatives. And I have never worked harder, and I've never been more proud to work alongside a Black woman as I had been to work with Kamala. She changed not only my life fundamentally, I believe she changed, literally, it's been almost 20 years, the face of the criminal justice system in San Francisco. What we did with young men and women who were selling crack, getting them out of the systems, getting them housing, that story is not told enough, but it taught me, despite what the right or the left believe about you, going into institutions and fundamentally changing them as a Black woman, no one will ever ring or sing your praises. It's about doing the work. So running for BART board some years later for me was about not wanting to seek power, but to simply be in a position where I knew, again, as a woman who is transit dependent, that if I did not step forward, someone else would tell our stories, try to push forth policies that they had no experience with in terms of the real lived material conditions. And so in many ways, the cost of being on this earth, Fannie Lou Hamer said, righteousness makes an exalted nation. And I believe that I don't unfortunately have a choice but not to serve because of Ella Hill, because of Betty Simon, because of the women right now in our communities who sleep in tents and deserve women who have a little bit more breath in their bodies to be telling their stories, but also writing legislation, to be making community where it is uncomfortable. That's my journey, and I want to be on it for the rest of my life, and I'm so blessed that I can be.
Oh, so you all just know that I don't know about those who are watching, but I have chills. And the one thing that's really coming to mind for me is the audacity. The audacity of those women who saw that leadership in you and brought you along in this journey. The audacity of each and every one of you to say that I have something to add, like that audaciousness is so beautiful and so inspiring and so needed. And we also know it's also not welcomed, particularly when that audaciousness is embodied in the physical being of a Black woman, and entering in a space where we're probably one of few, if not the only, and are not always seeing those that look like us. So I want to just ask a question that, stepping into and carrying forth with you all of that has been poured into you. And because we have this unique opportunity today to have both electeds and those who are seeking election on this panel, I would just want to ask for those who are elected to share something that really surprised you as you stepped into office, and for the candidates to share a little something about the campaign process that has been really surprising to you on this journey? And anyone can start us off.
You want to go first, Courtney? You're fresh in, right
Oh,
in it.
and it's been just about 3 months of surprises. That is absolutely correct. I think for my specific role is the biggest surprise was just so much of the orientation piece you just need on the city administration information. People just think, you're showing up to meetings, you're wheeling and dealing, you're doing the policy and all of that. And it's like, no, there's a lot of studying you have to do just about the legalities, the Brown Act, all of that type of stuff, understanding what is expected of you just from an administration standpoint and making sure you're not missing any deadlines, all of that stuff. It's more administration really in the beginning than a lot of folks realize. It's, people like to say, I'm going to jump in, I'm just going to go, right to making the policies. I'm going to, start, taking names and all of that. And it's like, no, you need to understand like just some of the basics of how your city is ran that maybe you didn't, there's some parts of being a resident that you understand about the political process within your city from a resident's point of view. But once you're in the nitty gritty, there's a lot more legal and administrative stuff you need to know to understand to even get to that point. So I think just transitioning from resident to public official, that was the biggest piece for me that was surprising, was just like, this is a lot of studying to really understand all the administration work that goes into it. That's not just the city manager's job or, just the city staff's job. No, it's your job to know that too.
I would agree. And I think that, you run a race, and I had a platform in my first campaign, and, it had all A's: accountability, accessibility, affordability. I'm going to do this. And, our progressive politics are going to win the day. And then you get elected, and then the clerk gives you your insurance documents. You get a key to the building, you figure out where you're going to sit, and then you're on your own. For many of these positions where there are no staff, you have no staff. You actually have to have another job, and you have to figure out with your job how to come to these meetings. Not for all elected positions, but many of them that Black women enter. Transportation authorities, boards, college board seats, city board seats. These are not full-time jobs. And so I had to learn pretty quickly, although I'm an Emerge graduate, which is a training program for women running for office, a Democratic office. There are so many things that sometimes, unless you're being taught by an elected, you're never going to foresee. And again, being that there are not a ton of Black women electeds, our experience is very, very, very different. What has surprised me the most, although it has been excruciatingly difficult to move and to have success, and I do feel like I've had a lot of it in my 5 years in office, I've been very, very successful, only not because of the infrastructure that exists, but because of the Barbara Lees, because of the Freds. Fred called me the day after my first election. How can I help you? There are folks who are elected, non-elected, folks who just want to see us succeed, whether it's, I know someone who's done something here, or you should think about calling that person. My consultant, A. Smith from Bear Star Strategies, gave me information a long time ago in the beginning of my run, and I'm so glad I have. He said, folks will try to take you down for a $30 Uber ride. I need you to have the best accountant. Folks are not going to trust you with money. Racism is real in politics. These are the structures that we need to set up, so we always turn in our Form 700, or there's no improprieties ever. If it's a bagel, a biscuit, you need to run your shop, even though it's just you, like they would not expect. They, meaning folks who may want you not to succeed. I told you so. We don't need someone like that representing a $2.5 billion institution. So what surprised me, again, was how difficult it is, but also the people who are willing to drop anything at any moment to help you, but also how willing folks are, even with that, to help you get through the darkest times, but most importantly, to help you win, because ideas don't become policy on their own. That we need to understand all the different strategies and the ways that people have won good stuff for our folks. It just doesn't happen because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you. Alyssa, Jennifer, you want to speak to this around your experience being on the campaign?
Ooh, thank y'all for that wisdom, for insight as two amazing elected officials doing great work in our community. Being on this campaign trail now for only around 3-4 months has, yes, been shocking, surprising every day. But I think one of the most is just kind of what Latifah was talking about, that so many people are willing to help, are willing to offer just by me putting myself out there, that this is my goal, that this is my vision, that this is something that I'm working towards. To, they say closed mouths don't get fed, that just, putting a post out, sending a text to someone, making phone calls. So many people have responded just with love and encouragement. They've offered things that I wasn't even asking them for, things that I didn't even know they maybe did, or connections that they had. And so being a part of the community already and having folks know my drive and my commitment to anything I set myself to, just seeing that they are giving so much back to me by me just setting my intention. And that has been a bit shocking. I to be honest, expected people to be like, hold up, or you should wait, you should think about these other things. But it's been just, again, so much affirmation and people offering what they can to push this forward. And that's so important to me as someone who's, corporate free and who is trying to run a real grassroots campaign that's starting from the people up to the top. And so just being shocked at just how much love, encouragement, even people who just heard about it from a friend or saw a sign posted up will then send me a message of encouragement or start following me personally. And so all of that just means the world to me, to be able to connect with more people around just our values and wanting Oakland to thrive and be successful.
Yeah, I think this is so heartening. And Latifah, you said it well. Courtney, you said it well. Like, being in the appointed positions that I served in before getting on the campaign trail has been eye-opening to how much time you have to put into serving. And the positions often are not paid, or you get a $50 a month stipend for hours and hours and hours of committed work. And you have to do a lot of homework, a lot of research outside of your meetings, outside of the materials you might get for the meetings and the agenda and the specifics. There's a huge learning curve. And on the campaign trail, it feels like a more than full-time job to be running. And I think another piece that is so important for us as women, as Black women, we are workers. None of us on this panel are connected to wealth, as far as I know. We're not rich people. We work. And in order to campaign for the race I'm running, I have to work full time as a candidate, and nothing I raise can go to my living expenses. So I have to also work. Thank God I can do some part-time work here and there. I'm about to start working as a home health nurse. That's a blessing. And I'm so happy I can do it. And also, like, it's so time consuming. I still have to be a mother to my children. I have a senior in high school who needs to get to college, and that's a time consuming affair. Like, life still happens. And to be
That is a year. Oh my God.
Right? No, you have one who's gone through that journey. Yeah, it is a process. And, like, all of life continues. And I give thanks that my parents are in good health, but, add to it caregiving, add to it, if my kids were younger, childcare, the expenses, the time. These are the barriers that exist that are often invisible. And we have to have the ability to reform systems. Audre Lorde said, you cannot destroy the master's house using the master's tools. And I agree with that. And I want to also add to it that while this is the system we are in, and it's been created and fine-tuned for hundreds of years, that we have to destroy it from the inside and the outside. And in order for us to really make a system that is going to work for Black people, for people of color, for those who are marginalized, we have to be in all the spaces, and we have to pull each other up as we move forward so that we can do all of that. We have to be abolitionists. We have to be corporate free. We have to have the best records. We have to do it better than everyone, 10 times faster, 10 times better, 10 times stronger, 10 times smarter, cleaner. Oh my God. And all of that in a day. And then the next day we have to do it again. And we have to continue this struggle. And we do it with grace. And we do it in a way that doesn't just lift up Black people, but lifts up our entire community. And Alisa, I so agree that the amount of support and the outpouring of love has been amazing. And we have communities that are doing so much work. I often say that in Berkeley and in Oakland, we got the home of the Panthers here in Alameda County. And where I'm at in unincorporated San Leandro, people don't think about coming down here to raise their fist up and protest. But I'm like, what we're gonna do is make it sexy to come to Hayward and stand up against school closures. We're going to make it sexy to come to Castro Valley and make sure that we talk about ethnic studies curriculum in the right ways. And we're going to make sure that we continue to build power, because we are organizers first. And that is what leads us. And that is what's going to take us into making policy so that we can stand up for all the folks who need us to.
Thank you so much. So Jennifer, what you really brought us this piece of that we hear a lot, and I just want to have to step back to just really appreciate you, Lateef, for bringing in Fannie Lou Hamer. She is like one of my idols. Her story, there's never a moment where I don't listen to her story and have so much pride and so much hurt and so many tears that flow because of what she's gone through and where we have come because of it. And so I want to just really get to, and you speak to, what you all are kind of speaking to is the support, the needs, the no staffing, the working on top of work that we have to do. I really want us to spend a little time just, what are some of the unique challenges of being a Black woman in, running for or in political office? And really just speak to what does that, feel like, look like, the things you actually have to do and push against in order to advance the agenda that you are, or the mission and the vision that you have for your office and for your community.
Yeah, it's the money.
And then you go first.
You said the same thing, Lateefah.
There's many things to say. Yeah, you go first.
It's money. It's for sure money. It's capital. It's social capital as well. It's knowing who to know. And if you don't know who you don't know who you need to know to move forward in your pathway to leadership or public office. So that's a big challenge, because political circles can be very exclusionary. They can be very hard to penetrate, and that can be under the best of circumstances. So if you are a non-traditional candidate, and when I say non-traditional, I mean as in you're not typically a white man, navigating through that system can be challenging, even in an area that is as diverse as ours, where it's not unheard of to have a Black woman elected in anything. We have Black women elected, but how are they brought into the fold? And if you ask several of them, you'll say it wasn't that easy at first. I can't think of one person who would describe a Black woman elected who would describe their journey as breaking down political barriers as easy. So I think that's one big piece as moving forward, as the atmosphere that we're dealing with right now, where, again, to my earlier point about just our social networks being depleted from migration, either by choice or by force, being able to politically organize the way we used to and having a strong Black voter base is also a challenge, because where there were people where we know we could go to certain organizations to go and speak and gain support, not just from voters, but folks who want to help us organize with our campaigns, those organizations and those spaces have been depleted. So that's an additional challenge. Just the playing field is so different. So now you're going to have to step outside of not just getting support from the Black community. You're going to have to step into other communities that you may not be familiar with already, and also have to branch out to get that support. Also, just personally, a lot of Black women, we just do not have time. We're taking care of ourselves, our children, sometimes parents, and just finding the time to do one more thing, which taking care of our communities or being active in our communities is challenging. So those are some big challenges that I can think of just right off the bat. And Latifah, take it away.
I'll say too, there are tons of challenges, but in some ways, as I'm sitting here, we also need to have a conversation about all the opportunities, because I think the challenges are real, and the Bay Area is such a special place. But two challenges, and you talked about it, it's sort of generational wealth and social capital. I was running a race, my first race, and I was running literally, doing call time with another woman who was running for an office in another county. And I didn't have a list, right? I had my cell phone list, and I was working on it for days and days and days before I got to hire my first staff person. And this white sister who's a deep ally, she had a list. She went to Yale Law School. She had a list. She had been building it and taught to build it for years. So her first big email announcing her race, a little different from mine in terms of the time that it took. And so having folks to give and deeply trust you, we all do that in our communities. But again, unfortunately, because we don't have election finance reform, we all have to raise money. Every yard sign is $1. Every commercial is like 20,000. You're trying to reach a lot of people. You can't knock on doors in the same ways that you've needed to knock on doors. So it takes a lot of time to galvanize a donor base to help you win. Especially keeping your politics and your morals at the core of how you get there. And I believe in many ways, some folks who are running to win, it is very difficult to send back that $30,000 check. And being able to do that, I was able to do that because a lot of folks stepped up and said, we'll help you through a house party, we'll do this. And I had been working for 26 years on the ground before I ran for office. And so while I, again, had that iPhone, there was a lot of contacts in there. You think about someone who's just coming out of grad school or just been organizing for a few years, it's a very different conversation of how they land a large campaign. And I think the second piece, it is really trust. Do people in community trust Black women to lead outside of Black places? Something that I'm deeply still thinking about. We are second guessed consistently, but I think the way that we move through that, it is what it is. It will be what it will be. I decided in the midst of my second term to go back to grad school and get an MPA because there is nothing that we can't learn. There is nothing that we can't do. I need to learn how to ask for help a bit more and pick up the phone and Brandy says she'll babysit my baby anytime. Right, Brandy? I just need to be able to pick up the phone and admit that I'm exhausted and I need to sleep. So there are challenges that are external. There are also challenges that are internal. We have, sisters, an amazing growing community, folks who are watching now. We have, hopefully, the philanthropic community from a C3 and C4 level who want to see us win because they know that there's no service organization that is alone going to change the policies to get people fed and educated and housed the way that we can together. There is a clear understanding that the Barbara Lees are right on this screen, that the Kamalas, that the Bronze, the next Supreme Court justices, there are members, there are teachers, there are mentors. So as many challenges, I do feel like there are more opportunities that just need to be galvanized and glued together.
I will say that there is still so much room for first. We are in 2022. Today is 2/2/22. I don't know what people are doing for the 2 day on Tuesday, but people keep on saying it. So I am a Black, masculine presenting gay woman who is also Jewish. And I am running for state office, which means so much about, Courtney, I think you said it, representation that is geographical, representation that goes beyond gender, representation that goes beyond all sorts of things. And ultimately, it's about values. And when we uplift Black women, when we uplift women of color, when we uplift people who traditionally have not had access to these spaces, because these spaces were built to keep us in bondage, we change everything. And I am thrilled that we are breaking down barriers. 34 years, Courtney, 23 years after Barbara Lee. Alisa, first Black woman potentially. Latifah, you following the footsteps of giants, Ella Hill Hutch. We had the opportunity to do so much, and clearly it takes decades for us to get back at it. We have to break out, Black space or not. We are women who are strong and powerful, resilient, and we are able to do it. And it takes a lot of support. It takes all of us, the big community, the small community, and definitely the networks. So for everybody's watching, I hope that there is a way for you all to contact us. My personal email, I don't know if I should say it out loud, Brandy, or if I should just, how do we make sure people can reach us? Because I want everybody to be able to throw their love to all of us on this panel today. And I don't want to break any rules.
I'll make sure I circle back with ways in which to get information for each one of you and to be able to touch base. So I'll make sure we do that before we conclude today.
I appreciate that. And I'm gonna let you take it away, Alisa.
Well, all y'all just said a lot, and I feel like I'm experiencing or have experienced all those challenges, especially as someone currently seeking office. We talked about Oakland, is the home of where the Black Panthers was founded, a few blocks from where I grew up on 58th and Shattuck, actually. But even with having such a strong tradition and history of Black liberation, Black organizing, and Black folks trying to elevate our community here, we've never had a Black woman ever elected as our city's mayor. And those things still seem like, oh, we're not ready yet, right? There's people telling me, y'all, you need to sit down, or you should wait, or you should let other people who are not Black women go ahead for this election. But the same thing was said to the 2 Black women who were my elders who ran in the last cycle, right? So I already know that just waiting is not going to actually change the issue with people accepting and investing and allowing Black women to lead. We know what our communities need and often are shut out of all rooms of power, are not given mics to speak about our experiences or about what other folks need to do to allow us to serve and to lead the way that we're asking to, even sometimes in our own Black organizations. So there's still always work to do. And part of running, we have to confront those narratives. We have to confront people's assumptions about us. We have to confront even issues within the Black community. And I really love that Courtney brought up, like, our community as a whole is still being unequally pushed out of jobs or of housing or of opportunities in our city. So our base, people who may want to see someone who look like us, people who would be the first to support us, to fundraise or volunteer for us, are also struggling and are suffering in a way that they are not allowed to participate fully in civic engagement in the voter process. In Oakland, particularly, 70% of the people unhoused living in tent and curbside communities are Black. That's not by accident, it's by design. And that design makes it hard for those folks to exercise their rights to vote in a practical way, even though many of them are lifelong residents. So our community is harmed and our political power is crippled when it comes to electoral politics. And so we absolutely have to talk to other communities. And, sadly, even like consultants or people will tell me to not focus on my community, on people that look like me, just focus on the voters who tend to be white homeowners who, have all the things that they need and are stable enough. And I still want to reach out to folks that I'm trying to serve and bring into our democratic process. So those are definitely challenges I'm still working through, and appreciate all of y'all who have shared your wisdom or thoughts, or who've given me just some skills or examples of how to address that.
Thank you so much. I want to, I'm just like really taking in so much of your, all of your journey I want to take a moment because I see that the YouTube chat is like very active. And so thank you all for just keeping this very active. I'm trying not to just be a participant in the conversation and like really want to chime into all the good feedback that's coming up in the chat, but also want to just encourage the audience. If you have direct questions for the panel or myself, please put them also in that YouTube chat and we can bring them into the conversation. I do want to just kind of, as we begin to wrap up and come close to direct audience questions, you know, Fred mentioned earlier that we at the foundation are launching an initiative, Women of Color, Women of Power. And this is, you know, a journey that we are, you know, we've been on and we've been talking about for some time, and we've been in spaces, and we have a leader that believes in women of color leadership. You know, Latifah, you spoke to your specific example of getting that direct call. And this program being led by 4 dynamic women of color in the foundation. And I think it's important that I just say here that this is not one of just looking at how do we build and support women of color, Black women outside, but also we're taking that lens internally as well, which is really important. So I would ask, you know, that question of how do you, or how can you share some examples of really good, authentic support that you've experienced on your journey, that others who are wanting to be involved, wanting to know how to reach out to support you, to support your platform, but also to support the movement, right? You say you want to pass legislation, it has to get operationalized. It has to be, you know, enacted in practice. And how do we get behind that? And so I would love it if you have some examples through your, you know, your place as an elected or already in public office, or for those who are on the campaign trail, of like some good examples of support for you on this process and on this journey.
I mean, there's a lot of tangibles that are going around in my head, but in the darkest of times, because there will be, whether it's the hate mail, sometimes the death threats, especially if you're doing work around dismantling systems, people don't like that, who don't like that. It gets really scary. And you're like, what am I doing? You know, to your point, Jennifer, like, what? I know this is the right thing to do, but being tested, it is when you get a call sometimes of folks who are like, I got you. And no matter what that I got you is, that's not a tangible necessarily, but what is, I think is extremely important. And I'm hoping that the foundation can encourage us to meet more, to not just talk about that. Yes, everybody needs administrative help, easy. You know, now you can pay for childcare because of some great people in the legislature who've made it real when you're running for office. Now that's a legal expense. There should be sort of Black feminist or just ways in which we make running and serving a bit easier. But one of the things that I think is extremely important for folks watching, and I'm gonna tell a little bit of family business. We don't have the luxury, and I'm learning this through the coaching that I'm getting, and I've been faulty on this, to divide ourselves within the umbrella in which we want to serve. That different institutions will pit Black women against one another, knowing that we are all bearing our children. In this city alone, we lost over 100 within 12 months. That in itself, fratricide, mounted with oppression and poverty and deep disease, no endorsement will fill our communities with what we deserve and we need. I think electoral politics has the opportunity potentially to break up deep, wonderful souls that our grandmothers and our aunties and uncles built in the Bay Area for a long time amongst us. There's not many of us who get this opportunity to work full-time for our people. So as we decide to take on positions of power, I am learning to be wary of other forces taking us apart. And it typically involves a check or an endorsement, or who is not radical enough. Our grandmothers were more radical than all of us. So let's just say that, right? But I think that there's political wisdom in the stories of elders that will tell us what we're experiencing now in electoral politics all over the country with Black women is both new and very old. And how can, as women of color, not just Black diasporic women, we continuously figure out how to set up both pragmatic circles of study, of coming together on policy ideas, but really to ensure that we're healed every single time we sit at a dais, and that we are unaffected by those deep evil forces that don't have our people's best interest at mind. I don't think I have anything else to say on the panel, because I was like, should I say that? Should I say that? But yes, there are, even within Democratic circles, within labor circles, within donor circles, whether it's organized or not, we can actually create opportunities to be stronger together, because at the end of the day, it'll be that kid on 96 in Bancroft who needs us more than any of these forces that are trying to separate us or figure out who's more radical or who's more central. We are all trying to make sure that our babies live.
Lateef, I'm gonna have you start going last.
I mean, but
every time you come in, you just drop the mic, and I'm like, that part, and then we can go ahead and conclude. Yeah, anyone else? Just thank you for really bringing in that real, because that's the part that, like you said, you're going to air some laundry, but it's important for us to do that because we have those who are coming up behind us, and we don't want to romanticize the process. We want to be really clear of what we will be showing and modeling for others to come behind, like really understanding what it takes to do what you all are doing. So yeah, if anyone want to go ahead and answer that question of some really good examples of how folks can support you on your journey in public office and on your way to public office.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Lateefa. I think it is the soul that needs to be nourished on the way. I think what I feel so often, it's like, oh, I'm so excited. I got this endorsement and that endorsement. That lasts about 3 seconds. It's like hitting the crack pipe. That is over and done. And we have to really move on. And, I'm not trying to make light of anybody's issues.
Yeah.
And it is so difficult to be on this journey because it is a lonely one, to be constantly trying to encourage people to understand that it's not just me, it's my values, but it is me, it's my name. I need you to check the box with my name on it. Healthcare is on the ballot. I'm a registered nurse. Like, let's keep it real. We on the 3rd year of a pandemic. We have all been struggling. It is a global issue. And I am still trying to make sure that people understand how important it is that we rise up together through this, because we're all in it together. It's not about whether or not you wear a mask or I wear a mask. It's about all of us protecting one another. And that, to me, is what this journey is about. This political piece, it's about elevating humanity, elevating principles upon which we all rise. And for me, what I know I need, yes, fundraising, yes, endorsements, yes, all of that, because we are within this capitalist structure that every mailer costs 50 cents, or every boost on social media has a price tag. So that's real, that's tangible. My heart is sometimes so heavy. And when I need to spend time with my family, it's like we got 3 hours on a Friday night and the rest is it. So I don't know if anybody can give me some extra hours in a day. I'll take that magic. And if you can't give me some extra hours in a day, come through and help me answer some questions on this endorsement questionnaire. Come through and help me knock on some doors on Saturdays, because we need to hit 100,000 doors. Come through and help me do all the things that make people feel full in the community. Let us stop these schools from closing, because it's not going to be one of us who prevents this stuff from happening. It's going to be all of us. And I think it is the community coming together to benefit the community that is going to make it happen.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Courtney, right before you chime in, just know we have about 2 minutes in this discussion before we open up to questions. Please put your questions in the chat and we will get to them in just a moment.
I would say the big need is just around strategic and deliberate inclusion of Black women in spaces outside of where we can just get used for our labor. Because I think that's the big focus is Black women, when it comes time to show up, to do some work, it's yes, come through, girl. Oh, we're here. Yes, we get used for our labor, but when it's time to uplift us for opportunities, sometimes people go silent. So since deliberate exclusion is the default, as we all know, and we're moving away from that slowly but surely, but not as fast as we need to, bring Black women into a space where you know there are opportunities for her to grow and uplift her. Mention her name in rooms of opportunities where she might not be. Ask her what she needs to show up to be her best self, because that's a big piece as well, where so much is expected of us, and people see this big bright light and they see that we have all these leadership skills, but no one really asks, what do you need for you to show up as your best self, to make this worth your while, not just the communities? Is this going to serve you personally the way it needs to? And being unapologetic about that, saying it's okay for something to serve you as well as the community. It's okay for you to center yourself. Those questions aren't really asked to Black women on our journeys a lot of time, even though we're encouraged to be the best, to do the best, put forth the labor. Also, this underlining conversation that happens that somehow Black women are not as qualified, underqualified, unqualified. That question always comes up, and thinking that deliberately making space for Black women to grow and succeed is somehow taking away from someone who's more qualified. Doing away with that stereotype is something that really needs to they need to cut that out right now, because we've already heard that conversation with the Supreme Court justice conversation about, oh, well, are we sure these Black women are qualified? Yeah. Are we sure anybody else was qualified? Because I haven't heard, there was a lot of unqualified, underqualified folks that got passed right along through. But now there's no way possible there's more than one overqualified Black woman to sit on the highest court in the land. Impossible. Let's not do that. So, making sure that you're bringing Black women into spaces for opportunities for growth, asking what they need so they can show up and be their best selves, asking what they need for it to be beneficial for them, and doing away with the stereotypes that making space for us means that you're not making space for a qualified individual.
I know we're going to get into Q&A. I echo what all of my sisters said on this panel about what we need and what types of support. Definitely for me personally, if y'all have any opportunities, rooms I can be a part of, platforms of your own. A lot of folks have, had me on their socials or their podcast. If you have skills or other things to offer in terms that could help us push out our message, even just a text of, hey, I see what you're doing, keep going. Hey, I liked your graphic, or just to know that people are even reading or looking at the things that I'm spending a lot of time and energy trying to put out. Signing up for our mailing list. We're going to be putting our personal contacts in the chat. Please contact us. Again, get plugged in, get activated if you have other people to put us in touch with, and just be a bridge to that relationship. All of those things is so supportive and is going to help move us forward and help ensure that Black women are able to keep accessing the leadership positions that we are seeking and that we're trying to build a path for others.
Thank you. I have a question, and I don't know, Latifah, you kind of brought this up a moment ago, and I want to bring this into the conversation real quick. You talked about, those partners who are supporting, through C3 and C4, and particularly, someone else, and you also spoke to those who like those things that can sometimes build bridges and also can tear apart communities, and sometimes that can be a check. So I'm not specifically, coming from the San Francisco Foundation and knowing our bold vision around racial equity and economic inclusion, and really lifting up the leadership on this stage, and for those who, people of color and women of color, particularly in the Bay Area, what are some of the ways that philanthropy you see, either through examples that philanthropy has done well, or ways in which we can do more?
I think,
yeah.
that you guys, San Francisco Foundation has hosted a number of conversations with electeds of color, of women of color in the last year that has actually been really amazing. I can't wait till we can do more. I imagine being in a beautiful place for a couple of days, a beautiful place, with good food, with folks talking about, it's not necessarily about training, really, it is developing a community. After one of those conversations that we had, Council Member Carol Fife called me and she said, let's actually set up a formal meeting with my office and your office. And I want, she's a super powerful, very clear leader. I want not a conversation. I want stats and PowerPoints, because if we're going to do police reform, and you guys have been pushing a lot on the BART side, we actually really want to share how we do it very practically. And I thought, I was like, well, wow, we would have had a number of conversations about this, but if it were not for the charge to let's get stuff done together, let's actually share the tools, share our staff, be in conversation, create formal alliances with our teams. That was, I've done a lot of work with electeds, but that was one of the first times where I felt like everything almost proprietary that we have developed in terms of our own strategy. Here's a sister who is one of the best leaders we've seen in so long, who, like me, came in and she knows it's super hard to make deep structural change in 1 or 2 years. She's saying, give me what you have. Talk about how difficult it was to create an ambassador program and how difficult it was working with all the unions, the good ones and the ones that we're struggling with. Give me exactly how crime has decreased because of these actions. I think it's having more spaces like that, Brandy. I feel like there's building trusting communities, which you guys are doing, that creates that. Or else, we're doing things in ways in a white supremacist culture that tells us that we just need to be having quick calls while we're running to get a muffin to go to our next meeting, like really creating and developing permission to be together and to bring in some of the I think best thought leaders around issues that we're all knocking our heads around with. There are global leaders in different contexts who are really deeply thinking about street communities in the United States, and meaning like, Ho Chi Minh, they've struggled with tent cities as well. We, as the best leaders in the Bay Area, women of color, I believe we are, having access to folks who are not right at our back doors, folks who are in university, folks who are think tanking all day, who, again, we're with our ideas. And sometimes we need to be joining forces with folks who their very work is to help legislative bodies on the ground, whether it be in a small special district, a small city, or, running on the state floor, what my sister here is doing. So I think that those opportunities would be great and really welcomed, and doing it the way that we need them to be done. Again, incorporating family and the realities of what we're doing and having teaching and learning opportunities. I'm excited about that.
I love that. I think you just articulated the social network and the social capital and the sharing of spaces and collaboration in a way that is more than just fluffy. And like you said, over a muffin while running to the next meeting. Really making time and space for generous sharing from experts. We talk about subject matter experts, the think tanks, and how often do we have access to that? Like, as someone who's newly in an appointment, like, I have reached out to people in high levels of leadership. Sometimes I get responded to, sometimes I don't, but it's always with genuine curiosity about how to implement the best policies, how to bring forward the best ideas together so that we can improve the systems upon which we've been entrusted to work and to serve. Like, we swear oaths when we take these offices, whether they're appointed, whether we're elected. And in order to do the best job, I think you're spot on, Lateefah. We have to do the work in combination, and we have to do it with the best that our world has to offer. We live in a global society today. Everybody can learn from everybody. I love that. And I think foundations have a unique access to this kind of capital, intellectual property, intellectual capital, and people who can make things happen.
I would say I think philanthropy can be a little bit more flexible than us who are on the political side. They can make the decision that within their strategic plan that they're going to focus on all types of different categories of equity, racial equity, socioeconomic equity, and they can make that a part of their platform pretty quickly and then develop their campaigns around that. So I just think that philanthropy has that flexibility sometimes we don't always have in politics. So I think moving forward, that's going to be a big driving force. Organizations, foundations that are able to quickly pivot to the needs of the community. And sometimes it's the electeds that have to catch up.
That's so
I don't
true.
have much to add, but would just say, philanthropy has done great work in helping to really educate or activate the community around the actual issues, aside from the politics or politicians, can help even push the electeds to do something that they're supposed to do. I'm reminded of the California Endowment, which has headquarters here in Oakland, but they had put out kind of billboards and public information around the health disparities in our community based on zip codes, that there's 10-year less life expectancy for people living in Deep East Oakland versus those in downtown and North Oakland. And so just having that information from a study that they helped to commission and work they're doing is pushing questions, pushing then policy around what, why, and how in the same city people have this extreme disparity and inequity in their life expectancy based on our health conditions here. So I just think philanthropy has done and is doing a lot of great work to activate and to educate the public.
Yeah, thank you so much just for being really clear about where philanthropy. And one of the things I always think about when I enter philanthropy, and I've only been in this sector for about 4.5 years. And it's one of the things that I think you have to get comfortable with. I can't, what have you said? Like you didn't step into this space to go and I want to just take up the power. I wasn't seeking power. But what you have exemplified on this in your talk today was that when you step into a place of power, in a position of power, the responsibility, right, that you hold with that power and to leverage that power to move your communities. And so, it really just, and when you said that call to philanthropy is, how do you not hold your power, right? But to shift power where it belongs and to leverage the power you have to make the difference. And, I'm really thankful to have a set of colleagues that I work with, and that's the conversations we have on a regular basis, to where we push ourselves, right, to the place so we can have these type of conversations and be bold about it, and to be open to the advice you're giving and the push you're giving for philanthropy to step up and use our platforms to continue to move the agendas that you have taken the pathway to hold public office and to move from your vantage point. So I did not see any questions come up, but I am seeing so much. And I take that is because you all have covered so much and have hit every point that has spoke authentically. It was really hard to get to it. Give me a specific Black woman. And you can't really ask that when you have a panel of Black women. I'm just going to be saying, because we show up, right? We don't take that off. We show up in that everywhere. And so it's just been a very authentic and real conversation. And so I want to come back to one question I would love for you to have just really briefly is, one of the things the Women of Color, Women of Power program that we're launching at the foundation is really around building this bench. We do have, and Alyssa, you talked about this, being able to lead at any age, right? You had the spaces to continue to grow your leadership along the way in the city of Oakland where you were born. And that's just a really amazing space. So what advice would you give to another young Black woman coming up on this journey? If you were to if you had a moment, that elevator pitch of what advice would you give to those who are coming and following in the trails that you all are blazing?
Heavy question, but again, I was activated and empowered at such a young age that's carried me to this moment right now, to this campaign right now. I would say to younger people who are, pursuing any type of goal or even trying to just get into school, that, to trust yourself, to trust your goal and your purpose and why you're doing it, to stay grounded in that, no matter, how much negativity or people might question you, to be sure of yourself and that you don't need permission to lead. Right? It may be elders, maybe people in your own community that tell you you're too young to do something. But again, we can always learn, and our young people are ready to lead, and many of them know exactly what they need to be successful if adults or older folks will listen to them. Out in Oakland, I've been particularly visiting a lot of high school students in classrooms, and people are like, well, what are the students talking about? And I say the exact same thing that everyone else is talking about. They're talking about public safety. They're talking about economic opportunity. A lot of them work, and many students in Oakland choose to go to work versus school because they're trying to provide and support their families or support themselves. We have a lot of homeless youth here. They're worried about housing. They're worried about their families. They're worried about COVID and the pandemic. They are experiencing all of the same issues as us, and they will inherit all the decisions that we're making as elected leaders. So youth should always be at the table and should never be afraid to speak about what they need and don't need permission to lead on that.
I got some really good advice from Barbara. Actually, Congresswoman Lee, we were together on a panel with younger women asking this very same question. And she said something I didn't think she would say. I thought that like every woman who's elected in office, they're going to tell every young woman to run for office. She said the opposite. She said, do something first. Like open up a preschool, clean up a park, start an organization, like prove to the community of people that you want to serve, that they can trust you. She said, we don't need, and I was like, wow, because like in a lot of our training, it's like, go, run, do it. She talked about the need of real deep servant leadership within community. She said babysitting kids is oftentimes the biggest blessing that someone can do for a working mother on a Saturday, or giving giving a nurse who has kids a nap, when she gets home. This idea of deep servitude and power and decision making in terms of whether it's public or private in community, it comes from test. And we all know, I think I'll stop here, but you don't really have a testimony unless you've been tested. And that doesn't mean elected office oftentimes. It means struggling for life, your liberty, and your own freedom and that of your community. So yeah, Barbara is telling us to do something, create something, be a part of something, follow before you seek to lead.
I love that. I think in addition to that, like your test and your age do not necessarily equal the same thing. Many of us are tested at very young ages. And so when you feel moved, it might be the right moment. Like you're good enough right now in the place that you are in. And one of the best things that can be done is to reach out to women who are in the position that you want to be in.
That's right.
Men who are in the position that you want to be in, because sometimes it's the first.
That's
so,
right.
Reach out to the people so that you can establish a relationship with them, because a lot of times people will give you advice. They will be very pleased to know that you want to do what they are doing and they are willing to share. Sometimes folks do, hold their cards to their chest and they won't share. They say, I already have a mentee. Take that and keep moving forward, because we don't have to have a scarcity mindset. There is plenty, there is enough, and our democracy says that we deserve a choice. So step in and get the help you need. I also did the Emerge training. Elisa and I met at Emerge training. Courtney, aren't you our Emerge sister too? Hey, this is what Black women look like. We look like folks who learn, who educate, who train, because we want the skills and it's there for us. So all we have to do is step in and know that you will be received and you will be loved through, because the more of us that move into these places, the more of us have the opportunity to give back. And that's what we are doing the whole time. So yeah, I love that. Serve first and also step in so that you can get what you need to be the best servant.
You sounded like a rabbi to me.
Ashe.
I think the one piece I can add is just don't be afraid to step in and step up when you see something needs to be addressed in your community. I think a lot of times children and young people think that their discernment isn't as accurate because they're young. And I would argue the opposite. Children actually see things very clearly. They're very astute, they're very observant. And I think sometimes as we grow older, our thoughts can become clouded. We can bring different issues and project different things onto different scenarios, things that aren't there. But I feel like children are able to see the world very clearly, and that is a gift. And as the, I guess, are we elders now? I don't know. When does the age of elders start? I'm going to be 35, so I'll claim it now. As elders and and parents, it is our job to let children observe and let them speak and hear them and converse with them, bring them into the fold, because like Alyssa has said, she was brought into the fold very young, and look at her now. Like the children are watching us. But as far as us encouraging them, feel free to speak your mind. What you are observing, even if it's not maybe 100% correct, speak up and say what you're seeing. If you're seeing an issue, do not be afraid to get involved. I spoke at my high school. Now, I think that was 3 years ago. I told them if they want to get involved on an issue and the adults around them tell them, no, they don't want to encourage them to organize or be involved, honey, find another adult. Because I feel like that is a gift. As the people who are eventually going to get older, we are going to be dependent on these young people to push forth the movement and keep the power going, the momentum going. So I feel that young people should feel free to be confident in what they're observing, be confident in their ideas, and always be encouraged to step into their moment and step into their power.
Thank you so much. I know I can speak for myself. I know I can spend a lot more time in conversation with you all. This has just been very dynamic and really just uplifting. And what really hit me a lot was like, do something. I have the philosophy that, my purpose in this world has to live beyond my job. I love the work I do at the San Francisco Foundation, but if that is not going to fulfill my divine purpose. And so as much time as it takes, as much time as I enter into this work, you all have given me a charge to continue to do something, to go out in my community and do something. So thank you so much for today. I know we're right at closing, and my closing will be very short, but I have to ask a lightning round question. This got to be quick. So this is going to show me, how you are on your chops. If you were to name me one song, we're Black History. So, I'm going to start with culture. We talked about said culture, and I'm going to end with culture. One song that will really just embody your leadership, to share that.
Rising Up, Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Yes.
What's Going On, Marvin Gaye.
Good one.
Respect, Aretha Franklin.
It's really like Kendrick Lamar, "We Gonna Be All Right" vibes in my mind right now.
Yes.
Feeling Black History Month, I know we will be with Black women at the helm.
Yes. Thank you so much. Oh, listen, that really touched me there. We are definitely going to be all right. Again, I just want to thank each and every one of you on the panel for your time. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for being with us on this amazing day, amazing conversation with just dynamic and audacious leaders. Again, Latifah Simon, Courtney Wells, Jennifer Esteen, and Alyssa Victory. Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing to watch your leadership and to see the amazing things and changes you make for us in the Bay Area. The San Francisco Foundation and its lead donors are pleased to support this program. And again, I'm Brandy Howard. And this is a Commonwealth program, and it is now adjourned. Thank you.